We had a session the other day. She's attached. No, they. Okay, see, exactly.
Yeah.
This is what. No, this is where it is.
Yes,
right?
yeah. And this is out of like force of habit. Like, I take no offense when people in my life who are close to me like misgender me, because it is a long process. Like, I'm 27 years of people thinking that I was a girl to using she, her pronouns. I understand that it's hard, but through correction and through understanding, someone like Jafina can simply just say, sorry, I didn't mean to say she, her, I meant to say they, them, and move on with the conversation.
What's going on, y'all? It's your girl Jay Lucci. I am back at the Park Car Conversation. It is beautiful. We are outside. This is one of my best childhood friends. You have been in my life, I guess. We're 27 now, so at least
like 20 years.
At least 24. Oh no.
20 years.
Yeah, I'm boosted. At least 20 years. And so for a conversation like this, I think you were a perfect person because it's just real raw, like when we talk about things.
And I was honestly, like, I was really scared to like talk about this topic with you specifically because you've been such a long time friend of mine. I didn't want your perception of me to change, which is, something that throughout this conversation we'll bring up. But Man.
Well, I'm so happy that we can honestly really debunk life, and at the true essence, that is what life should be about. Today, we are going to be speaking about understanding gender identity.
My name is B. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as non-binary, previously thought to be a cisgendered lesbian, which is just someone who's cisgender is someone whose gender identity matches the biological sex that they were given at birth. Okay. So for my, in my case, I was a woman who identified as a woman and loved women, so I was a lesbian. Right. But now I identify as non-binary, so my labels, are... My labels for other people can be very confusing. They can be very confusing for myself too. So that's, like, if you guys are confused, join the ride because I'm on it too. Like, goddamn. And yeah, so I now identify as non-binary. And for those who don't know, non-binary is an umbrella term in the gender identity spectrum, wherein I identify as neither female nor male.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make sure I put the subtitles while you're speaking.
You already know,
so that people can follow, because I think even, be familiar with the term. So when someone says, oh, like a cisgender, right?
Someone who is cisgender.
Okay, so that would make, okay. So if I say that person is cisgender, that means they just, whatever their biological birthing parts are, match what they feel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But you never want to make the assumption that someone is something or someone without asking them first, because someone who was previously known as, for me, for example, like, I was previously known as she, her, and every conversation that I would have up until I changed my pronouns would be she, her.
Gotcha.
Until I started correcting people like, hey, I'd actually be more comfortable if you use my they, them pronouns, my non-binary pronouns. And that conversation alone was like scary for me to do, because I was validating something that I was feeling in myself that I was ignoring for a really long time because I was scared. So now that I identify as non-binary, I also don't want people to assume that because I was once female that I'll always just be female, and I can't just like change my mind, because that's ridiculous. My gender has nothing to do with my biological sex, and also you shouldn't be concerned about my biological sex to begin with.
So that's really the meat of it. I remember. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little backstory. We had a session the other day. She's attached. No, they. Okay, see, exactly. This is what. No, this is where it is.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And this is out of like force of habit. Like, I take no offense when people in my life who are close to me like misgender me, because it is a long process. Like, I'm 27 years of people thinking that I was a girl to using she, her pronouns. I understand that it's hard, but through correction and through understanding, someone like Jafina can simply just say, sorry, I didn't mean to say she, her, I meant to say they, them, and move on with the conversation.
And that has been one big thing since we've had this conversation, is that, like, even when I talk to you, I will correct myself and it'll be like, I'll say she or her and be like, oh, no, they, them. And I think in my own mind, again, we've spoken about it, and thankfully you have been very open.
Yes.
And
yeah.
they and they have been very understanding
Yeah.
as to, like, you know, again, we have to debunk a whole society, a whole like generation of learning, or I mean many generations. Like this, I think, is something that's more in the forefront now than it ever has been. You think?
Which actually not true, because like there is historical evidence that gender identity, the spectrum of gender identity, has always been around.
Right.
But through like the patriarchy and through colonialism and through religion and the push for colonialism, we've fallen into more traditional roles of being men and women.
I can get that.
Yes. Yeah.
I can see that. We're going to get into that.
Yeah, exactly. But who are we to say for indigenous tribes, for example, that they can't identify as two-spirited? But that's something that is very constant and you know, like very prevalent in those communities. So who are we to say that there's only two genders when there have been communities that have existed way long before us who have used this language before?
Right.
Yeah.
So our whole narrative, I think that our tone that we're setting, I think that we both agree on is mind your business.
Mind your damn business.
Let people, right, as they feel, do as they feel fit for them. And I think that really what I want to get across to people is that I feel that people can have different life choices. Or, for example, or live life and have different ideologies of how things are supposed to be, without stepping on other people's lives, without degrading people, without talking shit to them, without like telling them that their lives are not worthy. Because I feel like, especially within the LGBTQ community, within the binary community, you get a lot of flack. You get a lot of like judgment, right?
And on that same line of thinking too, right? Like starting the conversation with somebody about gender who has no concept of gender whatsoever, that's already like a difficult decision to come up with. So why is anyone like harping on someone when all they're looking for is support? You know, support from people that are close to them.
Exactly.
And this is already like difficult for them to come to terms with, let alone towards other people. So just make it easier for them and just change your mindset a little. It's not hard.
Right.
Yeah.
It boils down to respect.
Exactly. Yeah. It is all respect. Like if you respect me, even if I was a complete stranger to you, if you respect me enough to use my pronouns because you validate my existence regardless of who I am or what I do, or if you know anything about me, then that's all that really matters.
And so this episode is specifically for people, for what you just said, who are in their head just like, nah.
Yeah. What are trans people? Why do trans people exist? Why are why are gender neutral bathrooms becoming like a thing? Like they're disgracing our children.
This episode is for you specifically. You know, it's good for
and
everyone
you should be
watching. But it's specifically for the people who have that mindset. Like, I'm speaking to you, if that's you behind the screen, who you're like, that's dirty, that is not right, that's not real, this is messed up. Because there's people, let's be honest, and I know some people that are like that. This episode is specifically for you because I want you to be able to understand how you broke it down to me. Yeah. I was able to think about things differently, and that's what life is about. When we are able to, acknowledge and appreciate and just invite other people to speak to you on their life, then maybe you can be like, huh. So this is where the story started.
Yeah.
So me and you had a tattoo session, right? And you basically like broke everything down to me, and I had these really hard questions. One of my first questions was like this. Naturally, people say, okay, people who are identify as non-binary, you have a vagina or a penis. Yeah. So which one is it? Like, how can you decide all of a sudden that you are neither of the above? And your response, it really resonated with me.
Really?
Tell them your response.
I told them, why are my genitals your topic of conversation?
Period. I know it makes sense to you in your head because at the time it made sense in my head. I was like, okay, well, I can understand why people would say that because
I understand it too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I've had these conversations with myself for years and years. So like, I know exactly what you guys are thinking, but here I am.
Yeah. So can you bring us through the journey? Like, what made you like move forward in thinking from being cisgendered
to non-binary?
Yes. To non-binary.
Right. Okay. So when I was younger, I really just thought, like, coming into my own sexuality, I was like, okay, like, I'm a girl that likes girls. I never had to question my gender. I also I didn't have the language. I think that's what it stems from. I didn't have the language to understand what I was experiencing.
True.
Which was gender dysphoria, right? And gender dysphoria is when you feel out of touch with your gender identity, right? So I never looked in the mirror and saw myself as a girl. I never like looked at my girlfriends and been like, yeah, like you and I are the same. Like I always just thought that I was a little bit more boyish or more on the guy side. I was a tomboy, but I was just like I was a really I don't want to say butchy either. Like I had masculine traits.
Is saying butchy offensive to people? Is butch an offensive term, period?
It can be, yeah.
Okay,
depends. Like,
good to know.
Yeah. But I also don't want to say butchy because that puts a connotation that people who are butchy might identify as non-binary or otherwise, right? And I don't want to put that assumption out there. But I definitely had masculine qualities. So when I started doing, traditional masculine qualities, I should say. So, I did boyish things. I didn't like girly things, and I like darker colors.
Heavy on the Hot Wheels.
Exactly, heavy on the Hot Wheels. Yeah, you already know. Yeah. And I also want to preface the conversation by saying, like, the things that I'm listing are rooted in deep gender-specific attributes, if you want, if that makes sense. So like
via colonialism and all these things
that make
it like boys do this.
Yeah, the boys do this. Yeah, girls like pink, boys like blue. So I very much had that mentality for a very long time. So I was like, okay, like guess I'm boy, so I'm boy. And I didn't also very much like agree with calling myself a boy. I needed something else. So when I came to the term non-binary or gender fluid, it was really difficult for me to wrap my head around that because I was like, oh, but binary is male and female. There's only two, and that's what I was taught. That's how I was raised. That's what I was taught, and that's what up until that very moment is what I assumed. But when I separated and when I got the language and the education that gender identity and gender expression and like and sexuality, those are all different things. So once I got that language, I was able to be more at home in my own body because I wasn't fighting.
Amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't fighting with myself, being like, maybe if I was just a little more girly, I would feel like more of a girl. If I was only a little bit more manly, like I wouldn't be in this in between and feel displaced in my community, right? So when I got the language for gender identity, gender expression, and sexuality, it really like opened my eyes.
As your longtime friend, I am very, very happy.
Oh, thank
you.
When
you said that, like, I found the language to, like, feel better with myself, that really made me feel, like, warm inside as you said it.
Yeah,
because
thank you.
I can imagine, and this is the thing, where people who don't have this,
dysphoria?
Yeah.
Or these thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. Dysphoria or thoughts. Or they just don't have this position in life.
Yeah.
You would never think that, like, this is something that someone has to deal with.
Exactly.
And so I think what a lot of people do is they live in this space where it's just like, well, I'm not like that, so you are wrong. There's something wrong with you.
Exactly.
We're not going to change the norm because it makes sense to me because, like what she said, it didn't, what they said.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to you.
And I actually never do that. I never correct people when they get my pronouns wrong. I just let it slide because I don't want to have that conversation with people who might come and attack me being like, oh, what does that mean? And then I have to have this whole thing, right? So it's like, having these conversations is really beneficial because it'll give people who are watching the perspective moving forward that they shouldn't assume. And that it actually makes it easier for other communities to be comfortable with being honest with you about who they are. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Drops the mic. Real talk.
Yeah,
No, real talk. And I told you to make sure you call me out and like correct me because this conversation really should be about education.
For sure.
And what was important is that you are so understanding of the journey for other people also. And I remember you said something to me. You said a lot of people within the LGBTQ community are very quick to get angry at people.
Yes, yeah, through cancel culture. Yeah, that's very prevalent. Yeah.
Right? And so what I want to say, like my piece, I'm going to try my best
to
like just, respect as you are. That's what you feel.
Yeah,
and you're my friend.
Exactly.
So period, bottom line is that I should respect that.
Of course, yeah. And I respect too, like if you have like traditional family values at home, I completely respect that. And I don't want your kid like, I wouldn't want to put my I guess my lifestyle choices or whatever the case may be onto your family if you're trying to raise your son a different way, and that's none of my business either, right? Like it really isn't. And it doesn't matter if you raise him traditionally because that's like I don't care.
Right.
It doesn't bother me that you raise him traditionally.
Right.
And it like it doesn't bother you that I am different either.
Right.
So yeah.
I think from the outside looking in, really, I can see where a lot of people who are within like the heterosexual community and what they feel, because I've heard it being said a lot of times, right, to the LGBTQ community, is that they believe that, you know, the lifestyle choices that they don't agree with shouldn't be pushed on them.
Right.
Right. And they're constantly saying, well, like, okay, so let's say you feel this way and you identify as non-binary, you are they, them. Yeah. I see you as that. And so as much as you need me to respect you, you need to respect how I feel. And I'm going to continue to call you X, Y, Z. And do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do totally get
a
what
lot
you're
of people have that perspective. And while I can understand what they're saying, it has to be a mutual respect. So if you want to live your life this way, I'm going to live my life this way. Like, the point you get messed up with is when you are being like intentionally malicious. Like, when you're being intentionally mean about things, when you're being rude about things.
And I'm going to keep it real, yo. Like, I had my own, you know, transphobia or whatever instilled in my own self. I was like, you know, when people were coming out as non-binary, when I didn't have the language for myself, I was like, what the fuck is that? And also, like, why? Like, why make it more difficult for yourself? Like, what does this mean? And like, you know, I would see pictures of people transitioning and get like mad. But what the fuck? Like, why? I'm in the community and I should be uplifting these people. So when I checked myself and I started, you know, like, and it was probably just because I was upset that these people could find who they were, and I was still working my way through that journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
Yeah. Because if it really didn't bother me, if it had nothing to do with me, I could let that shit go. But obviously there was something in me that was so bothered that it, you know, resonated years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have no, wow.
Yeah. I'm going to keep it real, yo. I had transphobia for sure. Like, as someone who was gay, I was transphobic. And a lot of people are. Like, unfortunately, a lot of people in the LGBTQ community are very transphobic. They actually have it the worst. People like black trans people have it the worst. I'm gonna keep it 100%. Yeah.
I've heard that, especially even within the LGBTQ community, that being black and gay, like, you could be
intersectionality,
gay, but being black and gay, you are now at the bottom. But that's because you're being black, and black people are always at the bottom of like, you know, racism and criticism.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff like that.
They're at the bottom of that ladder, and then when you add them to another community for intersectionality, they're at the bottom of that ladder, and it just keeps getting added on. The more, you know, discrepancies are added to their list of self-identity.
And so while we're on the black community, let's talk about, we're going to talk about some of the challenges that you face, right, with how you view your life and others. Okay. And this is solely to speak on the people who, again, are having a hard time either navigating through this concept, navigating the terminology, et cetera, et cetera. So the black community. Yeah. When I spoke to you and I called you about this, you dead said, you're just like, I know your, like, a lot of your viewership they're black folk, and that's a little intimidating.
It's scary, yeah, because I understand that, like, you know, I know a lot of cultures have traditional values, but I think there's like, it's like illegal to be gay in Jamaica. Like, you could literally go to jail for that, and like in places.
I don't mean to laugh. It's just.
I also, you can correct me if I'm being ignorant, but like, is that true?
I don't believe it's illegal.
Okay.
But to the streets, it might as well be.
Right.
Like,
yeah. In the Philippines, it's illegal, basically.
I know I've watched documentaries before where there are, like, gay people in Jamaica live in, like, the gutters. And they build their communities in there because they have to stick together. They're not safe within, like, you know, regular population. Over the years, I think that it has changed. Yeah. Quite some, thankfully. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But yeah. Like,
well, what is your commentary after that comment that I have said?
I thought it was very sad, not on your part. It was very real. That is a very real realization. That's no bullshit. I know, obviously, being within the black community, I grew up, I would say, in a pretty homophobic family. The narratives are pretty much like heavily pushed. The music that you listen to, if you listen to, like, you know, dancehall and stuff, like, they use a terminology, obviously, that, like,
is offensive
to the LGBTQ community, right? I have a good friend who pointed something out to me because I had this conversation, and he said, you know, thinking about it, it has been heavily pushed in the black community for years. And the point is that back in slavery, they would take, like, the strongest slave and they would rape him in front of the other slaves as a point to, like, prove to people that, like, see the strongest one, we're gonna do that. And that was, like, obviously male to male, right? And so, like, Historically,
awful.
it has been engraved, especially into the trauma of the Black community.
Wow, yeah.
And that's something that I never thought about, period.
Wow.
That
I'm glad that you told me that. Yeah.
that it could be like, because I said, in a rebuttal, I said, yeah, but I think majority of Black people probably like are, homophobic or don't agree with, homosexuality and the LGBTQ community, non like binaries and things like that, predominantly based on religion.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
And I think even without that being said, like the original point about slavery, I think the subconscious,
yeah.
even though like you might not think about it or even have known that
Generational trauma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have just been passed down
Right.
and passed down.
Absolutely.
But within the Black community, number one, like we're perpetuating, like, we want to push the narrative that people
Yeah.
need to move forward. The Black community, we need to like move forward because obviously we've experienced so much like hurt. And then what they just said, that this is what you have to do. You have to correct yourself. Okay, if you're a good person, you can correct yourself.
Thank
right?
you.
What they just said to us was that within the LGBT community is that Black folks still at the bottom.
Yeah, for sure.
Regardless.
Yeah.
So how are you pushing pro-Black, but you're like, oh, but you're Black and like that? No.
Everyone but you. Yeah. Yeah.
It makes no sense. So, okay, the Black community is something that obviously can be very intimidating, which is sad because I want the Black community to do better. Again, I've seen it. I've been around it. I'm going to relate this back to Christianity.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Right, because I grew up in a Christian household.
I was raised Catholic. Yeah.
Speak on it. Was that a challenge at all? Like,
oh my God, it was a challenge. I was never faithful. I don't think I agreed with a lot of the teachings or the language that was being used when we were raised. I think I'm spiritual, but I'm not faithful to Catholicism. So I'll put it out there. But growing up in a Catholic house and coming out as gay was very scary and very hard for me. And coming out as non-binary was actually a lot easier, I think, because my experience with my family had already progressed past all the like weird stuff of coming out. So when I told them like, okay, I actually don't identify as a girl, and I educated them on like the language and the terminology and who I was, they were all on board. Like they're very understanding. Yeah. So
not everybody gets that, but thankfully,
yeah.
Shout out Tita. And
yeah,
Tito.
Exactly. Yeah. And to go back to religion, it is very much instilled in the teachings that it's man, woman, Adam, Eve, not Adam, Steve, or whatever those those quotes are. So yeah, it is really difficult to look back on my faith and find any sort of support in those teachings and be like, yeah, I relate to these things. And that's probably why I am not religious, because there's not a lot of stuff in there that I can personally relate to, because a lot of those things are not necessarily against me, but they don't support me.
And so this is what I want to say for the people who use religion and their faith as a way to condemn and put down the LGBTQ community, people who will be, identify as non-binary, is that ultimately what you're doing is picking and choosing in the Bible. You're choosing to say that at some point it was said that this and this is wrong. Again, like you said, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. There are also in that same Bible that you read parts in the Bible that speak about, before you take point out a plank in your brother's eye, you look at the one in your own eye. And so there's so many stories, like even like the biblical, like Jesus, like drawing the circle in the sand and saying, for those of you who have not without sin, cast the first stone.
Yeah, cast the first stone, and no one could.
And if you are without sin, like you cannot pick and choose to tell when people are wrong. If that's your belief, that is your belief, and that's fine. But for you to tell people you're nasty, you live a gross lifestyle, this is condemned, you're going to hell, like, how do you know you're not going to hell? Like,
bitch, you're already there. Like, goddamn, yeah.
Mind your business.
Yeah, and who are you to say that your sin is inherently better than mine? That you were gonna go into heaven because of what you do. But like, I live a good and peaceful life. I live a good, loving, compassionate life. I'm not gonna get into heaven because I like girls. I'm not gonna get into heaven because I don't agree with the genitals that I was given at birth. Like, that's it.
And so I'm going to answer for those people, because I can hear some of those people that I know very well in my head saying, yes,
great.
this is the ignorance that a lot of people will have. They go like, yes, that is exactly it. And so again, there's one judge.
Yeah.
And if you're, this is only for people if you're religious, okay? Ultimately, there's one judge. And when that time comes, but you believe on Judgment Day, you're going to have to get there too. And you shouldn't be worried about other people. Other people do not like translate into your salvation. They do not like allow you to get anywhere.
For sure.
Just you. And so to have such a harmful narrative and have such a mean narrative, especially when people use the Bible and use like their faith to condemn people, I think it's so wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's so wrong. You can agree. I want to normalize this. Disagreeing in lifestyle choices, right? Because I think it's fair.
Totally
People
fine.
just like, or like, you know, and say, like, as you said, they don't want to live their life in the way that you live their life. Existing, coinciding in the same communities without being hateful.
Yeah,
being
exactly.
respectful.
Being respectful.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, you can respect me, but you don't have to like me at all. And you know, I can say that for real. Like, you can like anybody. Sorry, you could respect anybody, but you really don't have to like them. And all of this really boils down to that. Do you have mutual respect for other people? Yes. There's your answer. Has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with religion or like interpersonal relationships. It really is just like, am I going to be a respectful person to the community or to anyone else, literally? And it's yes or no. It's a yes or no question.
It's as simple as me correcting myself when I don't use they them pronouns. When you told me, you know, even your mom, instead of saying my daughter, now says my child. And it's as easy as, you know, making those small differences that makes someone else feel comfortable with who they are.
It was also, you know, like, I want to put it out there that it was wrong of me to assume that you wouldn't be able to understand what my experience was, because you know, for all my life, you were a heterosexual cisgendered woman, and like this gay little bean like comes up to you and is like, I'm this and that. Like, how do I know that you're gonna understand any of that? And now,
but like,
and now you have the education for it. Yeah. And I'm glad that I had that conversation with you, and I'm glad that I was able to be honest with someone that I consider a very close friend of mine. Yeah. Because now we have this relationship, and I can move forward comfortably in our relationship, knowing that I'm being honest with Jafina.
Yeah. I will confidently say myself that this has been a journey for me. Just understanding, again, I grew up in a very homophobic family. I mean, not everybody. No, I'm not going to say there's definitely not everyone in my family, but I have had very homophobic individuals in my life. Of course. At many different stages. And it's like when you grow up and you are born in the Western Hemisphere, like, likely chances are that you could be Christian. Yep. But if I was born in another place in the world, like, my religion would just be whatever it is based on like where I live and like what I was taught. And so I kept a lot of those feelings also, like, innately. I'll be honest, like, it doesn't, like, when I see, like, for example, like, two guys kissing or like two girls kissing, like, growing up, I'd be like, oh, like, something in me would be like, probably how you felt about like trans, like, you know, people who are trans.
Well, that's also how I felt about gay people before I realized I was gay. You know, like, I was like, oh, what are they doing? Like, that's weird. Like, and then I became one of those weird people, right? Those like weird people that became girls kissing girls, and then. Yeah, through the exposure of other people and through the search for search of education, like, I was able to understand that, oh, I'm part of that community.
That's exactly what it is. And I had a coworker once upon a time who was of the trans community, and it was the first time, like, up close and personal, like, that sounds crazy to say, but like up close and personal, I had a person in my life who was of that community. So I was able to ask like all the questions about like transitioning, what it felt like, what do things feel like now, do they feel like they work, hormones, all these different things. And at the core, I liked this person. This person, before I even knew whether or not I suspected, like, this person was a fun person. I used to laugh with them, et cetera, et cetera. And so all it took was for me to like talk with them a little bit more. And then my perspective completely changed. Even my sister mentioned, because, you know, before, you know, I definitely have made comments in the past that could make people who are part of the LGBTQ community just feel less comfortable.
Of course, yes.
Maybe not like, oh, she hates them, nothing of that extreme, but just less comfortable, because it made me feel uncomfortable. Right, yes. But that's what it takes in life to like break your barriers. Like, if things aren't comfortable, then you got to go out and search and find the answers. You got to go out and talk to people, right? And that's the importance, I think, of this conversation, that people can change a perspective. And I remember we were at, what was it, KFC? We're getting food.
we're at Popeyes.
We're at Popeyes, and I brought it up to you. I said, you know, when at Yorkdale Mall, when they had the gender neutral washrooms,
Yeah.
I was one of those people that were saying, that's a little much. You don't think? Like, that's a little extra, right? And you broke it down to me. You want to break it down to them?
So gender neutral washrooms are there to help people who are uncomfortable going into female identifying bathrooms or male identifying bathrooms because they feel unsafe going into those spaces, not knowing how the people inside there will react based off of how they look. That's really all it boils down to. Like, if I see someone who's male presenting in a female bathroom, I'm gonna be like, why are you in here? But who am I to assume that that person's gender is not female? If they want to come to the female bathroom, then they should. And instead of doing that, instead of making, like multiple communities uncomfortable, let's just give them their own bathroom. And people's arguments are like, a gender neutral bathroom, like, what is that about? It's like, isn't your house bathroom gender neutral? You got a urinal in there? Like, I don't think so.
True.
So, people made a big deal out of the gender neutral bathroom, but it's really just to make other people more comfortable.
And so that, like, pretty much boils it down to me, because I think a lot of people, again, are selfish in their thoughts.
Yes.
And selfish in their thoughts meaning, like, you only agree with what you know, and anything that challenges that, you are, like, freaking out about.
Yeah.
Because essentially what you just said to me, like, as someone who is cisgendered, heterosexual, who at first was like, these gender neutral washrooms are much, like, it's much.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, could you imagine as a cisgendered heterosexual person, myself, when I was thinking the way I did, see someone who is coming into a female washroom, but, like, looks
is male presenting, for example.
Yes, exactly. And I'd probably be like, excuse me, but then how do you, like, show me your private parts?
Yeah, how do you navigate that conversation?
Let me see what it is. So in order to just, like, scrap all of, like, the again, the misfunction from people who have ignorant minds, who want to be like, well, show me your gender parts. Because again, people's gender, like, their genitalia is none of people's business. That's one thing you said to me real fast. I was just like, if it's boy or girl, like, which one is it? And you're like, respectfully, like, my genitals are nobody's business. And that stuck with me. It just made so much sense. Like, mind your business.
Yeah.
So I hope that gives people more of understanding to some of those things.
Yeah, and I also don't want people exercising the privilege to be able to go into these like gendered bathrooms and be like, oh, well, you don't know that I'm trans. It's like, well, you're just being a jerk. Like, you're just taking up space in other communities with malicious intent. Exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about a little bit about binding?
For sure.
I think that's exciting.
Yeah. So I just started. So binding is when you wear a chest compressor to flatten your chest if you have boobs. And I started binding not very long ago. Like I've only been binding for about like 6 or 7 months. And it's definitely like a new concept to me. I would rather just go braless, but unfortunately, I have like pretty big boobs for someone who's non-binary, so I need a little extra help. So I wear a binder, which essentially is just like, it's like a sports bra with more compression, and it hides my boobs better than what's happening right now, but it does hide my boobs, and it gives me the silhouette of feeling and being male under my clothes. So it makes me feel more comfortable knowing that my female parts are not getting in the way of how I want to look or how I feel comfortable dressing.
Period. And that's on period. That's really what it just boils down to. Like, you found something that makes you feel more comfortable.
Makes me feel more comfortable. Yeah, and it's none of other people's concerns. So there are a lot of like health risks that come with improper binding. So to have the proper education of binding is something that's only coming to fruition now. And I was actually part of a program called Bind Safe, which has education from professionals to teach you how to properly bind, like what size you need, like anything that you may have questions about regarding binding is on there if you want to drop that link.
Definitely.
Yeah, but binding to me is something that helps better with my gender expression. And gender expression, not to be confused with gender identity, is how you present yourself to the world. So even if I'm non-binary, I present more masculine than I do feminine.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm non-binary and mask presenting is what it's called.
Got you. Non-binary, mask presenting.
Yeah. And a lot of people have a lot of things to say about like me doing my eyebrows and the length of my hair. Yeah, and sometimes I'll wear like a titty top, and like that's like my business. Like, once again, yeah, and it's like, it's none of your concern like what I wear.
It's just troubling that these type of things bother people so much that they have to like see people on the street and just like say nasty things. It's like if you are one of those people, you should just be checking yourself about like the integrity of like who you are as a person, walking around like you're high and mighty, because that says enough about you and what you do to other people and say to other people that you probably need to just shut your trap, to be completely honest. And that's from me also, you know, like again, I might not have always had like the most pure like thoughts about you know, all these kind of concepts or, you know, people, their lifestyles, and even sometimes saying like lifestyle choices, I feel like it makes people like it kind of like bubbles people who were with this community, like, oh, you made a different, like just your lifestyle choice. It's like everyone has
I also said that with a grain of salt. I don't want people to think that this was a decision that I made. The only thing that I decided was to be true to who I was.
Drop some mic. Drop some mic. What there was one other thing we spoke about in that conversation, and I think it translates to what you said, like you're still figuring it out. I said, okay, so we were talking about the gender neutral washrooms, and I said, all right, what about when it comes to jail?
Okay.
Right? And then you got people who are like identifying and as such, one gender, if you will, and then they have to go to that gender like jail, and then it's just like it's a big safety health issue. And then this is where a lot of heterosexual cisgendered people will probably be like, see, they want to choose when to be able to identify and not identify. Do you have like a response to the people who would be like on that train of thought? Like, what is it then?
I think that someone who has gone through the trouble and the trauma of transitioning is not going to pose a threat to the people that they are identifying with. You know what I mean? Like, if you are a trans woman who has been sent to male jail, that's obviously it's very, very dangerous. So
it's tough.
It's tough. Yeah, you got me thinking, because like
it's still a journey.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah, because now I'm thinking, you know, like, but I don't want to assume that person who's trans is going to do anything bad in the female jail, right? But if by patriarchal standards that's what they assume is going to happen, then you know, I mean, the whole system is corrupt. So
I'm more thinking like people who, like, for example, maybe haven't like transitioned but identify as like, say, like, for example, like not binary, but like, say
you're transitioning.
I like, for example, like a female by birth, by their parts,
assigned female at birth,
says that they feel like they are male, and then it has to go to a male jail, but they still have like the female parts. That could be very dangerous.
Exactly.
You know?
But I also want to mention that transitioning, like your gender identity doesn't correlate with your transition as well. So someone who claims, or someone who says like, oh, I identify as male, but they don't have any surgeries or whatever the case may be, it doesn't make them any less male. But it's difficult when it comes to these positions with institutions that are very gendered, right? So you got me thinking. I'm 100% like, you should put the female identifying person in the female jail. You should put the male identifying person in the male jail, as dangerous as it is for those people. It's more dangerous it's more dangerous, I think, putting them in their assigned birth jail.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I personally, mentally, for sure. And this is why I wanted to bring awareness to this topic. Because essentially, like, now when you're on Instagram, everyone's bio has their pronouns, and there might be people that don't understand why pronouns are there. And again, it's respect,
assumptions, or lack thereof. Yeah.
Also to, like, you know, include like community, right? And understanding.
Exactly.
Because the reason why those binaries are there is to allow people who, for example, don't feel comfortable in identifying what the normal for society, the gender normal.
That's what it is. You're normalizing something that an external community is trying to make the standard in themselves. And, you know, when other communities join in that don't necessarily identify with that, it makes it easier for us to understand like who's kind of like siding with us in the community. Like
Gotcha.
if I see your names in your bio, I automatically know that you at least have some sort of education regarding trans rights.
Right.
And that makes me more comfortable doing business with you, having conversations with you,
Mm-hmm.
and moving forward in just like a better, honest relationship.
Got you.
Yeah, yeah.
I might not change my bio because I really like my bio.
That's fine.
But
That's
I
fine.
side with you.
Yeah, yeah.
With you.
I mean, yeah.
Tell them, what's one thing you want to tell people who challenge your lifestyle choices?
Just mind
Cool.
your business. Just mind your business. My life is none of your concern, and your life is none of mine. That's it.
Period. Stop the hate. Get educated.
Yeah, yeah.
If you talk to more people, if you're uncomfortable with certain concepts, ideologies,
Yeah.
lifestyle choices, you should
Yeah.
do your part
Yeah.
as a human being and a forward-thinking human being to sit down and talk to someone, and you might actually feel like maybe you can change the way of thinking.
Yeah, yeah. I want to promote too that it is okay to ask questions as long as the person that you're communicating with understands that you are doing it for educational purposes and you're not just being nosy and you're not just being ignorant. Like you're genuinely asking to get more information for a better understanding for yourself.
Right. Period. And that's it.
That's it.
That's what the Parker conversation is here for.
Goddamn. Okay, there you
To
go.
do. So make sure you ask permission to
Yep.
ask questions.
Yep.
If
Ask
you're
questions,
curious,
yep.
just ask.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if somebody's not comfortable, they're not comfortable. But I'm sure people can reach out to you. Especially, I know you.
Of course, yeah,
are
yeah. If
very
anyone has any
welcoming.
questions, like please feel free to reach out. Like even if they seem like ignorant or whatever the case may be, as long as you're coming from a standpoint of education, I am more than happy to educate you. Yeah.
Peace.